What up, everybody, and welcome to the 2020 MMA Podcast Awards, or I should say the Sound of Violence 2020 MMA Podcast Awards, La Violencias, if you will. It still never catches on, Chris. I am your host, Pulver, joined by my co-host, Chris Medaffer, and we are here yet again to talk about all the dope things and sometimes the not so dope things that happened in MMA podcasts this year. Man, I always love this shit. It is so much work to put this show together behind the scenes. That's why it is goddamn the 22nd of January when we're recording this. And I'm excited to get into it. How about you, man?
Yeah, it should be interesting. It should be fun. Multiple things to discuss.
Yeah, parts of it should be fun. Parts of it are going to be uncomfortable.
Some of them that will run long on for sure, possibly, probably. I mean, most likely, of course. But yeah, like you said, a lot of podcasts are good, a lot of podcasts not so good, unfortunately. And
yeah,
you talking about awards show, B?
Oh yeah, we go and get to some of those motherfuckers. But I guess before we get to anything,
oh no.
Oh wow, should we get to beer? You know what? We'll get to beers after this.
Oh no, we're okay. False alarm.
Okay, that's good news. But before we get to anything, this year has been a crazy year. I think everybody can agree to that for a lot of reasons, especially in MMA in general. It's been fucking insane for a whole lot of reasons that a lot of it didn't need to be insane for. But these awards are kind of a way for us to celebrate MMA podcasts and not condemn them. That won't always be what we're talking about during these shows or during this show, but the whole reason we do this stuff is we do this award show specifically is because, number one, I like award shows. They're dumb, they're meaningless, they're a fun way to kind of celebrate cool things that happened and great content that people made. That's why we do this. But that being said, before we begin, I want to address something. The industry as a whole kind of needs to recognize the moment in time and the impact they have on it. A number of shows over the years, but especially this year, especially in 2020 as a whole, have given platform to a whole lot of voices like Colby Covington, Ali Abdelaziz, the Kawas, Dana White, a whole bunch of others. And it's time for a lot of those people, especially the content creators who allow those voices on their platform, to look at the world around you and kind of realize you're complicit in some of the rhetoric that led to the events that happened in 2020. Whether it be COVID, whether it be the barely held together democracy we have in this country, whether it be fucking all kinds of things, the violence, all kinds of shit. By giving these people a platform and not actively challenging them on their rhetoric, you are complicit in their rhetoric, and you are helping to spread that kind of rhetoric. And whether you say you're just trying to give them, oh, everybody should get a voice and you should hear all sides, that's fine, but if you don't challenge that side, then you're literally spreading propaganda, and you should be treated as such. And so there's no changing the fact that a lot of people did that this year. All you can change is your actions going forward. And just know we all remember, and we're all watching to see what you do next. So, that being said, it's award show time. Let's motherfuckers, and let's have some fun with this shit. Because I don't want to be all preachy and shit, but you have an outlet and you have a voice, and by not using your voice to counteract the people you have on your platform spouting crazy, semi-racist, or full-on racist, or just insane bullshit,
misspread, or the spread of misinformation, deliberate conspiracy theories that have no base of any sort of credible
or reality, even.
Yeah, or just there's nothing to it. It's all
it's not journalism. It's not responsible as a fucking human being in the year 2020 to allow that kind of language and not question it on your own platform, or else your platform, congratulations, is now a platform for fascists, racists, and Nazis. Whether you agree with it or not personally, by not challenging it on air on your platform, you are spreading that information. So that's something that I think needs to be said in this industry, because it clearly is not being said enough, because it's a problem. Motherfuckers are having Ali on he literally is responsible for sending people to work with Kadyrov, who has literally got sanctions from the U.S. as of this year. So, it's check the motherfucking mirror time in MMA, and it's time for a little bit of self-reflection. But like I said, it's not the last time we'll talk about it on this episode. It's going to come up a lot, but that's not why we're here. We are honestly here to talk about the cool shit that happened, and there may be a dunk here and there on a motherfucker, but mostly we're here to talk about all the cool shit. And while we're talking about cool shit, Chris, do you want to get us into the Papa Vodka Presents Doug Stanhope Presents, our sponsor, that is super real and definitely not a just giant gimmick that we've run with for years now?
I was gonna mess with you and
you're gonna say capitalism or something like that. You're gonna say Donald Trump.
I was gonna say I have a glass of proper 12 for you for the occasion.
Well, hey,
that's not worth my time. Instead, I will keep it Irish though. I haven't had one of these in a while. Going just with your classic. I mean, it is what it is.
Can you hear that? I think I can hear Sean Shea throwing up in his mouth right now for you drinking Guinness out of a can.
Yeah, as I know it says best enjoyed poured into a glass. I'm lazy right now. Maybe I'll do it later. I don't give a fuck. I got a koozie for it.
Man, you're gonna get roasted on this one. I can't wait for it.
Fine.
Well, to be fair, I am also drinking a stout. Although I am a bit more excited about mine, which is the Full Circle Brewing Company, the Stout Tapes Cherry Stout. Full Circle, I became a giant fan of after their Pie series, Pie of the Tiger, and I forget the other one.
Right. Is that a pastry stout or just a pie flavor?
I mean, no, this one specifically is a cherry stout. But I mean, how close is a cherry stout to a pastry stout? It basically is a pastry stout. I just don't know that it actually has pastry like elements. I think it's more of a fruited stout. But I'm very excited about it because I really, really like their beers. Also, I'm drinking out of a Four Brewers glass. Shout out to Four Brewers, who I'm sure will come up later on the episode. But they are a fantastic podcast, and actually they are a big part of the reason why I got into beer way back in the New Brew Thursday days. So cheers to this, Chris, and we will kick this motherfucking mule, as a dude who I don't listen to anymore once said. All right, so we are going to kick this off. We are going to do this in the Giant... I should give a shout out to both the Giant Bomb podcast series that they do every year for their end of the year awards for Game of the Year. They're a big inspiration for this, as well as the Film Vault. I always shout out the Film Vault. Anderson, Cowan, and Bob Bryan for I don't know how long, I think 2 decades now almost, or at least over a decade, have been doing award shows at the end of the year, and it's always some of my favorite stuff. And the Handies are another good one. All these award shows that don't just do the same thing everybody else does, and does a very goofy and different kind of award show. They're a big inspiration for why we do this. And honestly, we do this as just a celebration to be able to shout out all the cool content that came out. Because it's really easy to forget, especially in a crazy-ass year like it's been. So we're going to start with... Oh, boy. So we're going to start with... Oh, my God. I'm all mixed up on my notes. Here we go. So we're going to start with the 2020 awards. And we're going to... Our first category is Best Non-Active Fighter Guest on a MMA podcast. This is one of those categories that always needs explaining. So we have Best Active Fighter Guest. We have Best Non-Fighter Guest. We do not include non-active fighters, like non-active competitors in MMA, on the active MMA list. Really why this is the way it is because, like, where do you put someone like Julie Kedzie, who is like half media, half fighter, or like a Dan Tom, who has competed in the past and was a fighter, didn't compete at a high level, competed mostly, I think, at the AMI level, but like also did fight. So, or like the Randy Couture's of the world, who the conversations they're all having are very different than the conversations active competing fighters are having. So that's why we generally try and split this out to active fighter guest and non-fighter guest. parentheses active, as you guys can see. So it's a really shitty phrasing. Please somebody tell me better phrasing for this, because I every year struggle with it. But Chris, we got our list. This is in order of the amount of times we talked about them on shows, I believe. So in order of the amount of times we mentioned them throughout the year. Our nominees are John Nash, Fernanda Praches, Dan Tom, Aaron Bronstetter, Sean Sheehan, Julie Kedzie, James Lynch, Graham Boylan, Eugene Behrman, Saif Saud, Kareem Zidane, Jens Pulver, Dean Thomas, Chris Reaney, and Ant Walker.
It's a solid list.
It's a really, really good list. This is honestly a list of like some of the my favorite people I like to hear on podcasts. So some people that stand out as immediate people I think we need to have in the top discussion. I think the top so here's the thing with whittling this stuff down is I feel like every year I don't want to sound negative about cutting people, because just by being on this list, we talked about a ton more people. Just by being on this list, it means you're one of our favorite guests that have been on an MMA podcast this year. I mean, Dean Thomas and Jens Pulver, I love both of them on podcasts, although I feel like most of their appearances came just from UFC content, right?
Yeah, I would agree.
Like, it's basically UFC Unfiltered were like the main podcasts I heard them on. And while they were great on it, I don't know that they necessarily are going to hold up against the rest of this list. But that being said, two of my all-time favorite lightweights and fighters in general, I think, to be fair. Oh, so we got to keep moving on up. Let's bump a couple people up. I think John Nash has to be in the conversation. Just off his appearances on Mookie and Crookie alone, not to mention his appearance on Fight Business podcast was incredible. And I can't remember a couple of others off the top of my head. But he was consistently, especially the regular segments and the Q&As and stuff he was doing on Mookie and Crookie were really, really solid and super informative. So I feel like he has to be on there. What do you think?
I agree. Yeah, I'd also say Dan Tom should be on there, as well as I want to put Eugene Behrman up there, but I know a lot of his appearances were just on Submission Radio. Nothing wrong with that, because it's more of a local, it's more accessible for him.
Well, and they're just like, he's one of their regulars, kind of.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely put Dan Tom up there.
I think Dan Tom definitely has to be on there. I don't mind putting Eugene Behrman on there. I feel like his interviews were always really interesting. Especially the Submission Radio ones. Although he has been on The Bash and a couple other things throughout the year. All right, let's see. Do we have like two more we want to move up? Boy, it kind of has to be one of those top three, right? Kareem Zidane would 100% be one of mine. I just remember mostly reading his stuff, which has been great. Obviously, when it's profiled.
Well,
and that's what I was going to say.
And I know I've heard him speak before.
Yeah, you've definitely heard him on the Writing and Fighting podcast. You've heard him on The Bash. He was on... I want to say he did one of the Bloody Elbow podcasts this year, but I'm not positive on that. I know for sure he had the really, really good episode with Nancy Kidder on Writing and Fighting, and then he had the Bash episode where they talked about the Abu Dhabi deal and stuff like that. I think number of appearances is going to hurt him in that. I think also the same thing is probably going to happen with Chris Reaney and Ant Walker. Chris Reaney, I always love hearing Chris Reaney on stuff, but a lot of times he's kind of like just pops in and hangs out. Or, he did have a really good episode with the Art Fight podcast guys. I know he was sat in on a couple of Nancy's Writing and Fighting episodes. Oh man, I was just looking at another interview he did that was really good. I can't remember off the top of my head. Oh, that's gonna drive me nuts. But yeah, again, I think him. Same with Ant Walker. Like I think a lot of Ant Walker's best stuff was probably the shows that he hosts or that regularly appears on, stuff like Unleashed. So I think that's probably gonna put someone like Aaron Bronstetter or Sean Sheehan or Fernando Praches above him for me, just because the amount of appearances they had and how strong they were. But yeah, this is where it gets really tough because really all these people are legit. I mean, James Lynch, of course, is a mainstay in all podcasting. That dude knows everyone and everything. I mean, he doesn't have the John Nash not like phrase that Jason Cruz likes, or Paul Gift rather likes to assign, but he's definitely always a good guest. And then Saif Saud was a really solid guest this year, although I feel like we saw a lot less of him this year than we did last year. Part of that's probably COVID stuff and his gym being closed a big part of the time. And then Graham Boylan, of course, of Cage Warriors, had a lot of appearances, mostly on the Bash, I would say, but a couple others as well that were really good. So I think it probably... Julie Kedzie appearances on Writing and Fighting were really good as well. I would say, I think, I don't know. Maybe we should just go with these top three.
Yeah, I think that's fine.
I mean, we already have a top three. So, of these top three, if you were to pick the best guest from a non-active fighter, who would it be? Because I could make an argument for any of them. But I would say, yeah, go ahead.
It's tough for me to pick because when I think of John Nash, I just think of show money or like if the shoes fit or if the shoe fits, and then that's about it.
To be fair, if the shoes fit did qualify for a couple of MMA podcasts this year.
Dan Tom, I just remember for his mixed martial analyst as well as
Protect Your Neck.
Or Protect Your Neck, that's what I mean. And then I know he's been on the Fight Site.
Yep, he's been on a bunch of stuff for the Fight Site. He was on 1-2 Punch with Shaq.
I'd probably say Dan Tom.
I think Dan Tom as well. That's what I would go with. As much as I love hearing John Nash on stuff, it's hard to beat Dan Tom. He's just one of my favorite fucking dudes in the sport, and he always. One thing I will say is, you know what you're getting from a John Nash appearance. You know what I mean? John Nash is going to John Nash. He's going to make very clever, witty jokes. He's going to be way smarter than than anyone else in the room, and he's going to drop crazy knowledge. Dan Tom, you don't know what you're going to get. Maybe you're going to get super tight analysis. Maybe you're going to get sweet Gaspar Noé references. Maybe you're going to get straight chaos and crazy off the wall jokes about Jim Miller holding a dildo. Like, you don't really know. So yeah, I agree. I think Dan Tom is our winner for best non-active fighter guest, or best non-fighter guest. And with runners-up John Nash and Eugene Behrman. I think that's a really good goddamn list, man. Hell yeah. All right, well, you ready to move on to our next one?
Yeah, looks like next one, I believe, is best fighter guest.
Yes, so we have best fighter guest up next.
I already have my
this doc so it looks a little cleaner.
I already have my top two just by eyeballing that.
Yeah, so the way I did this is I split them up. This is, again, in order of appearance and in order of number of times we talked about them. Or not in order of appearance, but in number of times we talked about them throughout the year, since I literally went through and tallied all this stuff up. So in order of the number of times we mentioned them guesting on a podcast, we have Angie Hill, Ben Askren, Colby Covington, Dan Hooker, Julian Robertson, Ioanna Jacek, Piotr Jan, Sean O'Malley, Darren Till, and Molly McCann. That's a good list. There's a couple people to get removed immediately for being problematic.
So I already have my three.
I mean, can we first off say Colby Covington gets removed because we talk about you the most is not necessarily a great sign, bro.
I agree.
Also, Sean O'Malley, a lot of his appearances in the first half of the year were a lot better than the last half of the year.
He's really kind of hurt himself brand-wise. Moron.
So I think Angie Hill is a given, right?
So, yeah, I was going to say Angie Hill. After that, I'd say Dan Hooker, and then 100% Darren Till.
Angie Hill, Dan Hooker, and Darren Till?
Yeah.
I think that's a pretty strong top three. Man, yeah, it's really... The only argument I could even make is Julian Robertson.
Yeah.
But I don't know, like, okay, so we should talk about the appearances that a lot of these people had. So, I mean, Sean O'Malley and Colby Covington, you can imagine how those went. Molly McCann had a bunch of good interviews on The Bash. I want to say she was on A-Side Live Chat one time this year, but I'm not positive about that off the top of my head. I might be mixing that up. I think The Bash was mainly the big Molly ones that stood out. Piotr Jan, again, The Bash was a big influence for that. But he also showed up on a couple other shows. And he was also spitting fire there for a little bit. I don't know if you remember, where he was like just dunking on everybody. He was like shitting on Cejudo for half the year.
I think so,
just like clowning a bunch of people. Joanna and Jacek, before and after the Wei Li fight, had a bunch of good interviews. Again, The Bash stands out as like some of those that make sense. Julian Robertson, I feel like did interviews with just about everybody. The big ones that stand out to me are the ones that she did with Phil, French Phil at the MMA site.
That's right.
The MMA site, the fight site. Jesus Christ, the fight site's MMA interview, or the fight site's interview show. I really enjoyed her interviews there. She also did, I think, an interview alongside Dean Thomas on might have been Unfiltered, something like that.
That makes sense considering that's her head coach.
Yeah, well, I know she did some stuff with Dean, and she trains them, and I don't just she lives right next to him, right? They all live together. Him, and Shorty Torres all did an episode together on something that I listened to him as well. So, Julian Robertson honestly is a close fourth in this for me. Ben Askren, strong first half of the year, obviously. Second half of the year, not as much. Evidently, he's still doing Rockfin episodes with Fronter O'Brien. Those have to be very pleasant to listen to in 2021. I think clearly our top three have to be Angie Hill, Dan Hooker, and Darren Till. Angie Hill had a couple really strong guest spots on stuff like Writing and Fighting. She was on Unfiltered.
So, was she on the one podcast that we don't mention anymore early in the year, or was that in 2019?
Which one that we don't mention anymore? Because there's a couple. You can just say it.
Mr. Moneybags, Secure the Bag podcast.
Mr. Moneybags.
He made a lot of money for his podcast. Kind of obvious.
Yeah. The fucking Friend to Nazis podcast on Spotify. Yeah. That dude, she was on that this year. That was not even that good of an episode, actually, to be honest. I think a lot of her guest appearances, honestly, were the ones that stand out. I mean, I feel like I just heard her on a ton of stuff. I think she had a total of 10. I think we talked about her on 10 different episodes for just guest spots. And I think a big portion of those were either Writing and Fighting or stuff like just random podcasts like Unfiltered, or I think she popped up on one of the MMA fighting ones that happened along the ways. I should have written these down, honestly, because I didn't write down all the guest spots. But I honestly really enjoyed all the interviews with Angie Hill this year. Dan Hooker had a ton of good interviews. One to stand out, obviously, Submission Radio probably is the top one. I think he was on The Bash at some point, if I remember right. I want
to say he was on Grange TV, but I'm not sure.
I think he might have been at some point this year. That sounds right. He's been on a bunch of them, to be honest. And then Darren Till, I feel like it's almost all his appearances. I mean,
Believe You Me.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's a couple Eurobash appearances, but it's almost all Believe You Me.
Yeah, like I listened to the one just from like a day ago. It was,
they're really good.
It's always
funny.
Really yeah, him and Michael.
Karen Till.
It's pretty good. Yeah.
That motherfucker's problematic though. You can't just not wear a mask because you broke your nose. Also, shouts to Yana
fucking sinuses, mate.
Well, shouts to Yana Kunitskaya, who wore a mask like 2 years ago when she broke her nose, and that was just like a suggested thing for her to do. This is Angie Hill, right? Yeah. I mean, we are obviously Angie Hill homers, so let that be a lesson. Also, full disclosure, I am wearing an Angie Hill t-shirt, so this might have been a setup from the beginning. I do have the USADA Dare shirt, so... but yeah, no, it's Angie Hill. I honestly... Let me put it this way. There's a reason why Leslie Smith is the artwork for our show. And go back and watch the Leslie Smith video where she asked Kobe Bryant about unionizing. And listen for who yells in the background and cheers Leslie Smith on. That's all I'm going to say. All right. So our best fighter guest on MMA podcast in 2020 is Angela Hill. So big congrats to her. And yeah, more Angela Hill, please, on everything. She makes every show better. I'm all about it. All right, you ready to keep on moving on?
Yeah, so this one is Best Podcast hosted by an active fighter. Looks like we have, and you'll help me with these names, we have Ceremonial Weigh-In, which I believe is Angela Hill's podcast.
Correct, great segue.
Champ and the Tramp, help me with that one again. Who's that one? That
Frankie Edgar.
Okay.
And that one dude from the Jersey Shore who hit a woman.
Oh, that one. Okay, that's a thing. I forgot about that. Coffee with a Chance of Meatballs is, I'm assuming that's Molly McCann.
You're right.
FNA, which one is that again?
Felder and Anik.
That's right. Fuck.
Yeah, it's a show they do every once in a while when they're like together in Abu Dhabi or at an event. I think they've only done a couple of them. They're pretty good.
Halfcast Podcast, I believe, is that Tyson, Pedro, and Taito Iwasa?
You're goddamn right it is. Those motherfuckers.
Yeah. MMA and Beyond.
MMA and Beyond is the podcast that I think it's definitely on hiatus. I don't know that it's officially dead. But it was the podcast hosted by Ray Longo along with a bunch of the fighters in his gym, like Steve.
That's right.
Steve, I believe Steve Kim. I hope I'm not fucking up Steve's last name. The Animal or the Manimal. I forget what they call him. That dude. And then there was a revolving cast of Ray Longo fighters.
A bunch of other Italian fighters from Long Island.
Not always Italian. I mean, there's definitely a Marab drop in here and there and stuff like that. But yeah, it's real good.
And then you got Remember the Show with Jason Anik and Bilal Muhammad.
Correct. Yep. We are officially blocked by one half of that show.
Rocco and Ryan is got to be Anthony Rocco Martin.
Correct. And some dude named Ryan. I don't remember who.
Then we got I Smoke Weed Because It Makes Me Cool show. Okay.
Jesus.
I'm kidding.
I mean, to be fair, he does like to talk about how he likes weed.
I don't know. It's just, I always just...
to be fair, though, I also, as much as I just said that, I do have some cherry gas right here that I picked up that's real fire. It's from Maven. It's real fucking solid. 34% THC. It's real good. It's real good. It actually does taste like cherry. So really, I can't talk.
Like, it's I don't know if you've seen that one video. I think it was from that All Gas No Breaks, where there's this kid in Oregon. He did. I don't know if it's just dabs or if it's just mostly just wax or whatever. But the dude's always high as fuck, and he says he's called Terps because he speaks Terpanese, and you can barely understand him. I'll send you the video.
I fucks with that.
Yeah, it's pretty ridiculous. But yeah. There's that one.
I mean, I do got a Terp slurper right here, to be fair, so I can't really be talking.
Okay, I'll send you the video. It's ridiculous. The Weekly Scraps, which is hosted by bantamweight title contender Aljamain Sterling and his friends. I apologize for not remembering their names.
It's mostly just him going solo. He then also has producer Cody Merrow, and we'll occasionally have his buddy Steve on, who also was on the MMA and Beyond show every once in a while. I'm a big fan of Steve. I wish he was on more stuff.
And then lastly, we have the writer and the fighter, which
Steve Lee or Steve Kim. I think it's Steve Lee. I think I'm literally combining three people's names. I think it's Steve Lee. I'm like 90% positive. Apologies about that.
Then we have the writer and the fighter, which is Jake Smith, who I believe is he in Bellator or was it in okay, that's okay.
Yeah, Bellator also recently competed in Submission Underground a couple times.
That's right. So yeah, those are the nominees for Best Podcast Host by an Active Fighter.
Yeah, some real solid ones on here.
I'll admit, I've listened...
Oh, wait. Oh, never mind. Go ahead.
The one I've listened to the most is just by looking at this, at least the two of them, is definitely Halfcast and the Weekly Scraps.
Yep.
I know I've listened to Ceremony Weigh-In multiple times, but my problem is when I have my consistent podcasts I do listen to, but then there's always ones that I try to remind myself to listen to and I fucking forget.
That's why I'm subscribed to fucking like 100-something podcasts. Yeah, you know what? At the end of this episode, I'll go through some of the stats of the stuff we listened to because I got our like award show doc here with all the numbers and everything. We listened to a lot of shows. I think we listened to something like 80 just new shows that we hadn't heard before this year. Some crazy numbers. So we'll get to those later. But yeah, I think Halfcast Podcast, the Weekly Scraps has to be on there, and I think Ceremonial Weigh-In is really the other one that stands out to me.
Yeah.
Just because honestly, if Raider and the Fighter put out more episodes this year, I might lean a little bit harder towards them. But they've had some pretty big hiatuses. I mean, no fucking. I don't hold that against anybody this year because people needed hiatuses. Shit, we've taken more time off this year than we've probably ever taken. Just like,
I mean, for obvious reasons too.
Yeah, well, with just fucking straight chaos. Yeah. Yeah, man, I think that's a solid top 3. I think these other ones definitely kind of would fall behind them. Out of these 3, I would go Weekly Scraps or Ceremonial Weigh-In. I think it's probably Weekly Scraps.
I was gonna say Weekly Scraps would be my vote.
I really like Halfcast Podcast. We should say before we move on, Halfcast Podcast is really solid. It's just the audio quality and the guest quality and the frequency, I think, is what's going to hold it back. Just because the audio quality, I mean, there are dudes who tend to yell and get boisterous as shit and not worry about blowing out mic levels, which I don't mind, but like I know it's not everybody's thing. Also, often drinking a beer during the show, which does not help volume levels. I can attest to.
Yeah, out of nowhere they'll be like, "Nah, mate, no, you can't."
Yeah. No, and there's a lot of crosstalk is the other thing, which, again, I am very guilty of all these things. But I think it holds it back a little bit in comparison to Ceremonial Weigh-In and Weekly Scraps. Ceremonial Weigh-In, I think the thing that holds it back is, as good as Angie's podcast is with her husband Adam, it's really fucking funny and it's a lot of fun. They've done some really funny bits, and I really enjoy it. I think the only thing that holds it back is the release schedule is not very frequent. Whereas Aljamain Sterling is putting out a crazy amount of content. He's doing mad research on fights. He's putting out predictions. He's having people like Steve Lee on a bunch, who I'm a big fan of. He's also getting interviews with guys like Marab and like talking about Fight Week in Vegas and all that stuff. He's had Al Iaquinta on. Yeah, I think it's easily Aljamain Sterling's podcast, Weekly Scraps, takes it. With runners-up Ceremonial Weigh-In and the Halfcast Podcast.
Hell yeah.
Hell yeah. So now we are on to the best podcast hosted by an inactive fighter. And you want to read these ones off for our nominees?
Yeah, so nominees for best podcast hosted by an inactive fighter. Nominees are Anik Florian, hosted by UFC play-by-play commentator John Anik, and former UFC featherweight, lightweight, and welterweight. I think he was like a bunch of weight classes.
He did do welter at one point.
Kenny Florian. You also have Believe You Me podcast with former UFC middleweight champion Michael Bisping
and Luis Gomez
and comedian Luis J. Gomez.
Wait, what do you? I thought he was just called Luis Gomez.
I mean, that's how he calls himself every time.
I'm pretty sure he doesn't like having his middle initial said, and he only likes being called Luis Gomez. I'm pretty
Is that
sure.
a real thing now? Because he always says Luis J. Gomez.
Chris, you're so good at picking up on sarcasm. You're really nailing this bit I was trying to do.
You know what's funny? When I was just reading that, I didn't even have the camera on, so I'm like looking at a blank template.
Oh, yeah. I'm just grinning like an idiot over here.
Yeah, like, it doesn't help. All I hear is your voice, and I don't see your face.
Yeah, that's probably not helping.
Now I can see your face.
Yeah, it makes more sense, right? Yeah. Speaking of super real bits, let's keep going. Keep reading.
So, one that I was already trying to put a line through, but I was trying to find the editing tool on Google Docs here.
It's the strike through is not easily accessible.
Yeah, I was just gonna go like this. You know.
Yeah, you can do that.
You talking about podcast B? For sure. Never met him. Below the belt with below. I can't even give it straight face. Below the belt with Brendan Shaw.
Yeah.
God damn it.
Yeah, it's probably gonna win, right?
Yeah, it's
all
a
right.
thing. Menace and the Man with Dennis Bermudez.
Yep.
MMA Stories. God damn it. Who is that?
Jeremy Horn and Monty Cox.
Okay. Thank you. Real quick with Mike Swick. I mean, his name is in the title. Mike Swick.
Yep.
UFC Unfiltered with former UFC welterweight champion Matt Serra and comedian Jim Norton. I think Jim Norton's still involved. Last time I checked.
He's still on.
Weighing in, goddammit, who does this one?
Josh the Punk Thompson and
That's right.
Big John McCarthy.
That's right. And then, of course, with the American gangster himself, Chael Sonnen, you're welcome. Which nearly half of his podcast is ad reads, but that's okay.
Well, the other half is denying COVID for a while there, so.
Oh, where's Brother Sin when you need him? Where's
Okay,
Brother?
well, yeah, no, you're talking about our
Joel.
our sweet boy Joel.
Where's Brother Cobra?
Yeah, so we can go ahead and remove the ones that were jokes, right?
Yeah.
UFC Unfiltered doesn't make the cut.
No.
It's not even close. Real quick, Mike Swick is good. I don't know that it hangs with these other ones. I do like Mike Swick's episodes, but like if you're doing dick sucking interviews with Dana White, I probably could have phrased that better. But I mean, if you literally run a Dana White promo ad on your podcast regularly,
if you're filleting the
interview. Yeah. To be fair, that category will come up later. So
I anticipate that.
Yeah, I think you've seen it.
Dude, I just like go on Twitter and I just see certain things. I'm like, of course that's a thing.
Yeah. All right. So between these 5, these are all really solid. I think Anakin Florian, I think, doesn't make the cut against these. Just because it's so mundane.
They peer pressure me to gamble. Just kidding.
It's just so mundane. Like, I don't know. I like that show a lot. I really like the production. I'm a big Cody Merrow fan. But, like, I don't know. To be fair, now that I think about it, though, they did have some good episodes. They had Brian Stan on for first time anyone heard from Brian Stan in a while. They've had, of course, they have Ray Longo on regularly talking about his stuff, which is
Ray
really
Longo's
good.
Minute.
Yep, the Ray Longo Minute. Ian the Duck Parker, who I really like. I think he's a great addition to that show. I don't really have anything against the show. I really like it, to be honest. I don't know. It just never stands out. Like, it's very, like, by the book, week by week MMA coverage kind of thing. And so I think, especially against a couple of these, I think it just won't hang in this top 3. But I do enjoy it. I think Believe You Me has to move up.
Yeah, I definitely Believe You Me as a finalist.
Yeah, it has to be.
It's not just because it's funny.
No, it's gotten better this year.
I mean, it's a lot of it, but they do they have gotten better at actually breaking. I mean, not that every podcast has to break down the fight, but at least discuss the fight, discuss the fighters, what's going the fuck on, you know. And I like how Michael is knowledgeable about a lot of the camps that the fighters are in.
Well, and Lewis is also doing more homework since he's trying to fight fucking Jason Ellis like a crazy person. So he's like actually nuts. Sparring all the time and way more invested in the sport than he has been in a long time.
Harrington is doing a better job.
Also, I will say, another reason why this list is on there, I did see producer of the Anakin Florian podcast tweet out that he's not doing MMA podcast production, he's doing TV podcast production. And then I saw Mike Harrington be like, why would you dunk on yourself like that? Because MMA, or because TV production is just copying from MMA or from podcasts nowadays. So shouts to Mike Harrington for that. I saw that shit and I thought it was great. I love Cody Merrow too, don't get me wrong, but I thought that was very funny. Yeah, speaking of great producers, I think MMA Stories deserves to be on this list. They earned it. They're telling the stories. There's no other podcast telling stories about Monty Cox like fucking hanging out with Jens Pulver and Jeremy and Matt Hughes and shit back in like the fucking early 90s at like the Midwest shows.
When I see Unfiltered, and I know he hasn't been with this show for like at least a year, where did Chris the producer go again?
Chris the producer ended up at The Athletic, and then The Athletic had their podcast cuts.
Fuck, that's right.
So I don't know where he's at nowadays. As we've said many times, we are big Chris producer fans on this show.
Yeah, so. I mean, the guy, he clearly...
How much worse did MMA did UFC Unfiltered get after he left? It got exponentially worse immediately. Yeah, it was bad. All right, for a third one, I would argue weighing in. Yeah, if we're gonna add a third one to the list, mostly because Menace and the Man I like a lot, but it's very guest dependent, and sometimes Dennis Bermudez doesn't give a fuck about doing that show. And he just is checked out. Which, like, I get it. Especially since they do a big-ass show. And some of their episodes where they're really good are really good. But I would say overall, weighing in, although Josh Thompson has some very problematic views, I will say just for John McCarthy's information alone about scoring and judging and officiating in the sport, and for him being out there and being critical about, like, let's say if Dana White puts out a video on the UFC site where he sucks his own dick in public, John McCarthy is going to absolutely comment on that and be like, this is embarrassing for everybody. And I think we need more of that in the sport. And
it's also impressive that he can do that.
Well, I mean, it's somewhat impressive, but not that impressive, you know? I was gonna Chris, you almost got me. I'm gonna go ahead and move weighing in up. I will say
has been a secret yoga instructor. Just kidding.
I will say, Josh Thompson also, though, we've actually played clips. I think one of our intro or outro or break clips over the year was this, but Josh Thompson's gotten much better at actually scoring MMA. Like, he's better at scoring rounds than most UFC commentators. DC, to be fair, has just recently started getting better thanks to Sean Sheehan and Ariel Helwani. But like Josh Thompson, we've played clips on the show in the past of him literally yelling at John McCarthy because, like, God damn it, John McCarthy, like, I literally can't watch fights the same anymore because I'm like, well, he's holding them there, but he's not doing anything with it. And I think the big clip was the Dom Reyes John Jones fight. And him talking about, like, John Jones really didn't land anything effective. And so a lot of the rounds he won, he lost pretty clearly. And so it's cool hearing that evolution. But yeah, that being said, and MMA Stories, there's no other show that I know of right now. I mean, Inside the Hexagon is probably close. But no show that is consistently enough telling all these old, crazy behind-the-scenes stories like MMA Stories is. To be fair, it's because Monty Cox had a hand in absolutely every part of MMA in the Midwest back in those eras. And also Monty Cox is a good storyteller, we'll put it that way. But I don't think either of those hold up to Believe You Me. Just out of quality of guest lineup, and just Bisping and Lewis are really fucking funny together, man. So I think it's got to be Believe You Me.
They're great. They grill the shit of each other. They grill each other's family.
Yeah, nobody's safe.
Lewis will shun his own son. He's like, well, my son's a little bitch. So.
Well, and also I feel like Lewis has also legit gotten funnier in the last year or so. I've become a much bigger Luis J. Gomez fan in the last year.
He's good too at, like, just being. He's like towing the line of what's crossing the line, but like
he's getting better at it. It depends on what show you're watching.
Before you couldn't almost really distinguish if he's serious or not. Now you could tell the delivery is a little bit better. It's cleaner.
True, but also we should specify we're specifically talking about Believe You Me and not other podcasts Lewis is on, because like we're not talking about Legion of Skanks.
Touche, like yeah.
Because like I will be the first to say Lewis is very problematic, but you know who isn't in this goddamn sport. All right, now that we're past the problematic things, Chris, should we take a quick break and then we will get to this next one?
That works.
Perfect. So
Yep.
we will be right back. All right, we are back for our next category, and before we got into this one, Chris and I both decided we probably should roll something proper or pack something proper for this next category. We still got our beers going. In this next category, Chris, you want to read this one off? Well, I go ahead and light this.
The Punch Kick Chill Award for best show to drink and get drunk or smoke and get high to.
That's right.
A lot of similes right there.
Yep,
and
that is the reason why this is actually an award originally started by the Giant Bomb Cast for their end of year video game awards.
Or similes, I mean synonyms. I'm a fucking idiot. I can't even talk.
Yeah, this was an
You know what I
award
mean?
they gave out for like video games that are best to smoke or drink and get drunk or smoke and get high to. You know, like a lot of like Rez or LSD fucking Dream emulator or whatever that thing was.
You ever
on
play
PS2.
WarioWare on the Wii?
Yeah,
That's
that kind of
fucked
stuff.
up.
Yep,
Yeah.
exactly. So this is inspired by that category as well as by the RIP. This is the the Punch Kick Chill In Memoriam Award. Since they are no longer around, man, do we love us some Punch Kick Chill, and they are 100% the inspiration for this. So, you want to read off the nominees while I light this Chem Reserve joint?
The nominees are 40s and Fights, Believe You Me, Body Lock Ryzen Intermission Show, Ceremonial Weigh-In, The Half-Cast Podcast, MMA Depressed Us, MMA on the Rocks, SWAT MMA, The Timbo Sugar Show, and the Vale Chujo Hour with
Vale Chujo.
Uncle Renato Laranja. Those are the nominees.
Yeah. I feel like a couple of the... Oh, also, you're smoking probably some homegrown, if I was to guess, right?
That is correct.
That is correct. Fucking shots of Chris Farley. All right. So, honestly, this award, I guess we kind of have to pick a direction, right? Because some of these are, like, just very manageable cocktail shows. Like, I would qualify Ceremonial Weigh-In and MMA on the Rocks as, like, very manageable cocktail shows.
Yeah, because even MMA on the Rocks with, what is it, Bill Welker and, what's his friend, Jeff?
Jeff the Animal Wilson.
Thank you. He at least kind of lets you know, like, hey, yeah, this is kind of what I'm drinking on, and it's kind of almost informative.
Yeah,
Or
yeah.
it is informative. in a
Yeah,
lot of
it's
aspects.
very much more like on the, the manageable drinking scale. Unlike...
Maybe in our last segment, if we're a preview segment, whatever, how we want to do this later on, I'll have some whiskey. I don't know. I'll figure it out.
Oh, we're definitely going to take a shot at some point. I have some nice rum I
Oh,
should
and,
probably take a shot of.
After I had that little Bolski right there, this is also unofficially brought to you by New English Brewing, Pure and Simple IPA.
You know what? As a backup, I actually have a New English Brewing Zoom bar right here that I'm going to be switching to after this cherry stout. I didn't mention this cherry stout. It's pretty good. It's very much like a classic cherry stout. If you think like a Bell's cherry stout, that kind of along those lines. It avoids like the metallic problem, but not entirely. It's pretty good. Let's see. So, tell me about 40s and Fights, because that's the one I'm not really familiar with. That's one you've listened to mostly.
Yeah, so to be fair, I can't remember how many times I listened to it in 2020. Probably because I
Couple.
was high as fuck.
I could tell you. You listened
these
to it
two-
2 times in 2020.
Two gentlemen. I think they're from the Midwest. Probably wrong. I just remember because the logo kind of looks like, it looks like Toe Jam and Earl, but what's the fatter one?
Earl?
Earl. It looks like Earl from Toe Jam. That's like the logo.
Earl's the fatter one, I'm pretty sure.
It looks like It looks like Earl from Toe Jam and Earl, but he's like slunched over and he's like this with a 40, because I remember seeing that like on listen notes.
Yep.
It's entertaining though, because they always have just the most ridiculous malt liquor. You can
Nice.
imagine.
Wait,
Remember
how
one time-
ridiculous?
I mean, they did do Steel Reserve 211. They've done some of the obvious ones. but they've also
Okay.
Done shit that you haven't really heard
Immediate
of.
contender.
Yeah, they also have done stuff you haven't heard of, or maybe it's like local. I I think they did. I think if I recall, they had one with Old English, and then they discussed why. And this is my brother Kyle. He's like, "Yo, they need to go back to glass bottles, not plastic."
Yeah,
I'm like, first of all, Kyle,
plastic bottles.
I haven't seen you have an Old English in forever, so I don't know why you bring that up, unless you're just downing them on the down low, which, man, I don't give a fuck. There's no shame in that.
Fair.
Yeah, but yeah, they essentially that's their main rule. They have to have a 40 while they do the podcast, and yeah, that's pretty much about it. It's mostly drinking. I don't really think they smoked, from what I recall. I think it was just purely drinking.
Doesn't have to be both. It can be one or the other. But I think that I think they sound like they have to be a contender.
They are.
Okay.
100%.
I think we have to move them up. Believe You Me. Here's the thing for Believe You Me. They drink on that show a lot, but it really focuses on the drinking, right?
No, I don't even think they ever mention what they're drinking.
Every once in a while, like Bisbee will say he's slamming beers, or Lewis will say he's clearly drinking whiskey, or you can just tell he's drinking whiskey. Yeah, I don't know that it's gonna hang with the rest of this list, to be honest.
Yeah.
Like it's good, but I don't know that it'll hang.
I say MMA Rocks should be a finalist. MMA on the Rocks.
I think I could go with that.
Bill
Welker and I think that's absolutely right, because Bill Welker, number one, maybe the best whiskey connoisseur in MMA podcasting. I'll go ahead and put that out there. I don't know a lot who are better at it.
I'd also say, and correct me if I'm wrong, SWAT MMA is the one with the two dudes in Vegas that smoke a fuck
weed
ton of
and
weed.
talk MMA. Yeah, I think that has to be number 3, right?
Yeah.
Because MMA Depressed, while it's great, it 100% doesn't require booze. I mean, booze doesn't make it worse. But they're not drinking. I don't know that it... Like, it's honestly... I will say weed and booze definitely don't make that show worse. But it's not inherent to the show. Same with a lot of these other ones. Body Lock, Rise and Intermission show. I mean, we'll get to it later, but
so is Timbo Sugar show? I can't remember the last time I've seen it. Did they actually even smoke on the show? They just talk about how, are they just all, this sounds cool to smoke, and it's all
been a while. I haven't listened since he said that super misty shit a while back. So I honestly couldn't tell you. So I guess that's why that's not on this list.
Which misty shit did he say? I can't remember.
When he was talking about how he beat Cheeto up until he didn't, and he's.
Oh, undefeated. I was assuming it was his mentally undefeated shit, or what the fuck? No, that's Tony Ferguson.
No. He did it too. He's like, oh, I'm not.
Because I do remember that he had in his social media bio, "I'm still undefeated. Cheeto, you suck."
Still does, I think.
Yeah, he still does. That's why, on any of his posts now, it's just all these Cheeto, vamos. It's the flag of Ecuador, constantly. It's or 12-1, 1-1-1-1, shit like that. It's well, he kind of asked for that, so.
Yeah. I think probably the only other one is Valetudo Hour. That was kind of a joke. I'm not gonna lie. Hanato Laranja obviously hates weed and definitely doesn't smoke weed in real life. And obviously, real life is the show because Hanato Laranja is a super real character. So, we're going to move on. I think 100%...
I was going to say, the script, caralho.
So, you need to convince me why 40s in fights should win, if you think it should.
So, since I only listened to it twice, I don't think it's convincing enough for...
Fair. Okay, fair. Since you only listened to it twice this year, I don't think it can win. That being said, bro, I'm going to listen to a lot of it going forward. That's a 2021 contender right now.
It'll be the winner because they do a lot of talk about what they're drinking, and they just shit on each other half the time, and then shit on other fighters. So I think that was the one I was saying, hey, this podcast is similar to us. Both very dark senses of humor, and we just kind of say what the fuck we want.
Yeah. Oh, you know what? I probably should have included the podcast that Uncle Bobby and what's his face do also, but that show went so off the rails. I don't know that I can. I don't know we can endorse it. So we're just gonna keep on moving on. But man, okay. So yeah, I think you're right. I think 40s and Fights is a future contender. This is a very, very, very tough pick between MMA on the Rocks and SWAT MMA. MMA on the Rocks is a fucking great show. And they do talk a lot about booze. Also, just regular, like, super consistent in their content. I would say the same thing about SWAT MMA. Dude, I really wish I knew their names off the top of my head. I don't have it in front of me.
I'll let you choose the winner because I'm not, like, bro, I don't know shit about weed. I just know about just weed in general, just flower and all that, and just I smoke it to go.
No, I mean, to be fair, they're super, super knowledgeable.
Only thing I know about that is like pens, dabs, wax, all that shit, but I don't partake in any of that fancy stuff because I'm such a goddamn lightweight as it is, so I can't hang. So you're not gonna hear me being like, yeah, man, got this new cartridge, shaw, or whatever, or
yeah.
Whatever. No, I would just have no idea what you're talking about.
I gotcha. Man, it's really good. I think I have to go MMA on the Rocks. And I think what's actually pushing over the edge for me, which I didn't expect, is the guest episodes that Bill had throughout the year. I mean, number one, Bill's whiskey coverage, like I said, is fucking undeniable. He also is really knowledgeable in cigars, too. Well, and all booze in general, but especially whiskey. That dude is one of my go-tos for stuff when I'm looking for new stuff. But he had a bunch of really good guests. When Jeff is on, I always enjoy hearing Jeff on there. But he also had interviews. I mean, Serena De Jesus, roommate of Roxanne Modafferi, was on a bunch of times, as she has been over the years. She's always a great fucking guest. I know, I don't remember if he had Steamrolla or any of those dudes on this year, or Jeff the Animal Wilson. Or, I mean, not Jeff the Animal, the Manimal or anybody on this year. I think he did have Manimal on early in the year, if I remember right. From the MMA and Beyond podcast. I know for a fact he had Dan Tom on, and that was one of my favorite ones. I think we have to give it to Bill Welker and MMA on the Rocks. It wins the Punch Kick Chill Award for best show to drink and get drunk or smoke and get high to, with very close runners up of 40s and Fights and SWAT MMA, or Smoke Weed and Talk MMA.
Oh yeah. So congrats to MMA on the Rocks.
Yeah, big shouts to Bill Welker, who's also just a very nice guy too.
Oh yeah, right. I mean, just from what he's talked about with his family, his young daughter, and all that, seems like a good guy.
He's a great dude. All right, so next we got best Patreon / paid content,
and the nominees are.
Let me bump this down, so that way it's all on the same page. Oh god, damn it. The
nominees are for best Patreon paid content: Between Rounds, Heavy Hands, Severe MMA, the Co-Main Event Podcast, and The Fight Site. So I'll just say this: I am only a patron of 2 of these podcasts. I am assuming you're a patron to all of them, because I'm just eliminated from.
Yeah, I'm a patron to all of them, but your opinion matters because, let's put it this way. You're a patron to 2 of them because you needed to hear their content. So I think they're automatic bumps to the top 3.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So you want to name those 2 in your experience with them?
So yeah, the Co-Main Event Podcast and Severe MMA.
Yeah, and what have you thought of their content? Because you're new to all that stuff, right?
Yeah, so I like the Co-Main Event a lot, because besides the live chat or the pre-live chat where you can kind of just cue in your questions and concerns and comments and opinions, which is, I mean, that's what it always is, right, when it comes to feedback. I like how they kind of respond upon that pretty much, I mean, immediately afterwards, just with their live chat episode, which is usually on a Wednesday. And then I think it's bi-weekly that they do like some sort of off-topic kind of movie stuff. I'm a big movie and TV guy myself, which is ironic that I mentioned that because I think the one time I wanted to watch something or along the same time as them, I forgot or something came up. I can't remember I think it was for it was a Charles Bronson film because I
Hard Times?
Yeah, it was a poll. It's like, do we watch Hard Times with Charles Bronson or do we watch Bronson starring Tom Hardy?
Oh yeah, both of which are great.
I like that movie a lot.
Yeah.
But I haven't seen Hard Times. Which
A lot of dicks in Bronson. A lot of
No,
dicks.
I recall. I mean, that I don't give a fuck about that. It's a good ass movie either way.
Oh, it's great.
I could definitely see if someone sees that for first time and you don't tell them what it's about, they have no idea what it's about.
Yeah.
They'd be very
You're
confused.
like, why does this dude just keep greasing up?
And just pissing everywhere.
Yeah. That's a heck of a movie.
Yeah.
Anyway, back to Co-Main Event Podcast they also had some great episodes of commentary tracks they did. Alaska Fighting Championship, they had 2 of those this year. They did 2 commentary tracks for
one of them I'll mention that I
Elite
watched.
XC.
Yeah, that one's pretty solid. And then I think Chad.
Oh, the Kingdom episodes, which were fucking awesome.
I know they also watched Deadwood, or was that 2019?
I think that was last year, but they definitely did Kingdom this year, which I really enjoyed that stuff.
I know they also watched The Watchmen, but the HBO series, miniseries.
Yeah, they did a ton of cool stuff this year. I think they're definitely up there.
And then what was the podcast that Chad did with his brother and a couple other people in Montana about like the history of Montana crime?
We'll get to that later, but that's Death in the West.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, that was really good as well. We'll get to that later in our non-MMA related stuff. Let's see. We should move one more of these up.
Yeah.
I think.
And then,
sorry. Yeah, get to Severe MMA.
Yeah, Severe MMA with of course Shawnee podcast.
That's
the
right.
Pod God himself, Sean Sheehan. I know every time I listen to that, it's either he recaps a fight. That's on the card he's previewing. It's like a quick 15 to 20 minute recap. I know he's also done a preview with a friend of his. I can't remember his name. I mean, he has a lot of different folks on there. But yeah, Shawnee podcast is always a good listen, especially because I sometimes appreciate if I'm driving or if it's slow at work. If I can't commit to like an more than an hour, he usually kind of keeps it consistent at like a 45-minute to an hour mark.
Yeah, and he does the regular Q&A episodes each week, which are always interesting, and like you hear kind of a range of questions from like just topical stuff to kind of more in-depth questions about like judging and stuff like that. And then he, like, especially on big fight weeks like this, like I know he's had interviews with fucking everybody from Luke Thomas, as well as Dan Hardy, which he teased in our chat for our last podcast we did. He jumped in chat and dropped that exclusive for us. That was cool. He just puts out a ton of content. Not to discount all the judging stuff too that he put out, like the Ben Cartlidge episodes and stuff like that too.
That's right.
So yeah, he definitely has been killing it with content for sure. All 3 of these are, and I'm gonna go ahead and just move the third one up. Between Rounds has been a little bit slow on content this year, and that's because TJ's been doing a lot of stuff with extra rounds for Fight Pass. Especially on Fight Pass on their YouTube or on their Facebook page. So I think really the third hat in this has to be the Fight Site, because they've just been fucking killing it with all the stuff they're putting out. A lot of their stuff is available not behind the Patreon paywall, although they do have a lot of cool stuff behind the Patreon paywall, like all the alternate commentaries, which are some of my favorites every week. Especially the last one for the Max Holloway one was one of my favorites. The Habib Nurmagomedov fight, which against Justin Gaethje, might be in the all-time great fucking Patreon episodes ever, just because of how that ended. It's really, really fun. I recommend going back and rewatching it because it totally holds up in a very great way. It's real good, and just overall. They've been killing it with all the content they're putting out over there, as well as all the breakdowns and stuff. So I think they definitely deserve to be in that conversation. Boy, this is a really tough one. I will say, just on pure volume of content, I think we have to go Co-Main Event or Severe. And that's a real Sophie's choice. Although the Fight Site, I feel like the Fight Site has been putting out so much more content overall, but a lot of their stuff is not behind their Patreon paywall. Whereas, like, specifically behind the Patreon paywall, Co-Main Event and Severe have been putting out a ton ton of content this year. Man, what are you thinking, Chris? It's a real tough one, right?
Yeah.
I guess. Well, you know what? So here's my argument.
Just to make it co-winners, I don't know.
Nah, here's my argument. So, a lot of the co-main event's greatest content that we talked about is not MMA related.
That's true.
And all of Shawnee's is.
Yeah.
And I think for that reason, we probably have to give it to Shawnee.
That works.
I will say, I think moment to moment co-main event might have like stronger episodes here and there. Like single moments or sections or like events. Like some of those Sir Nigel ones are fucking incredible. But I just think for pure like amount of content put out to the quality of it and the MMA relevance, I think we have to give it to Severe MMA with Shawnee Podcast. And that is full.
That's a good choice.
Bias recognized, I guess. I mean, I don't know. I own a co-main event shirt and I don't own a Shawnee Podcast shirt, so I don't know what that means for biases anyway. But I will say all three of these are fucking excellent Patreons, and you should subscribe to them. I mean, honestly, you should be subscribed to Heavy Hands in between rounds also. I didn't talk enough about Heavy Hands. Heavy Hands' Patreon is really good as well. Definitely less frequent. And a lot of it's just like bonus episodes where they're talking more about a card in detail on the prelim stuff. But it's more Heavy Hands, and like who doesn't want more Heavy Hands, for fuck's sake?
Exactly.
Yeah, we will talk about more. We will talk about Heavy Hands some more during this episode for sure. So, absolutely recommend you go subscribe to the Severe MMA Patreon, and then as well as the Runners Up co-main event and the Fight Site. And between rounds and Heavy Hands. All right, so Chris.
So this
oh
next
my God,
one.
This next one is the best clip artist. Okay, I don't even know how we're going to do this. I guess we're going to take a break, and I'm going to figure out how we're going to do this. So we'll be right back, and we'll make this happen. All right, we are back, and
yeah, we are.
There we go. There you go. Back to regular format like that. So we are going to mix things up. We're going to do clip, but we're actually going to do clip towards the end because it requires a lot of editing on my side. So we're going to keep on moving on our list. So up next we have most informative MMA podcast in 2020. Chris, you want to read off our nominees?
The nominees are Broadened Horizon, Come On Now, Fight Business Podcast, Show Money, and Writing and Fighting.
Absolutely. And you're familiar with all of these, right?
I am familiar with Broaden Horizon, Show Money, and Fight Business, I believe.
So I bet you once I talk about them, you'll be a bit more aware. Broaden Horizon, I have it on this list because Broaden Horizon is hosted by Drake Riggs, and he is... He essentially is mostly focused on Ryzen, the promotion, and interviews with them. You've heard me talk about it in the past. I think, Chris, you've listened to it too, right?
Yep.
Where he does interviews he essentially does translated interviews in Japanese, but it's very well edited, where you hear him ask the question. It's like the classic documentary style of editing, right? Where you hear him ask the question, you hear them start to say it in Japanese, you pot down the Japanese slightly, and you hear a translation over the top. And it's just very well done, and it's honestly, because of that, you end up hearing a lot of interviews with these fighters that you don't often hear speaking, especially not translated in long-form interviews, and especially not audio. Most time, if that's done, it's done via writing. So I think it's very informative, and it's something that not a lot of people are doing. I mean, I can name on one hand the number of people covering in-depth interviews on the Asian MMA scene in general that I like, that are consistently cranking stuff out. Guys like JHK or the dude at SCMP, stuff like that. So yeah, I'm a big fan of Broadened Horizon and Drake's work in general. So definitely been informative. That being said, I don't know if it's going to hang with the rest of these because they are like changing the way the business works as far as I'm concerned in MMA. Come on now, Chris, you do know, I believe. This is Trent Reinsmith's podcast.
So I know who Trent Reinsmith is. I'm familiar with him. I think he's very important just for, just
his reporting and everything.
Yeah, just most of the actual reputable and just let's call it broccoli journalism that MMA needs, the MMA scene needs.
Yeah, just like responsible ass journalism.
Yeah, he's basically giving you what you need or what you should.
Yeah.
But yeah, as far as his podcast, I know I've listened to it once, but I'm kind of drawing a blank. I know
you should jump back on, or if not, if you're not trying to listen, because he does it daily. So if you're not trying to listen to something daily, I also recommend. He also has like an edited version on Bloody Elbow where it's a best of clip. It's basically a best of show every week of the topics he goes over. And I know a lot of people enjoy that as well, so I'd recommend that if you guys are not trying to catch like a daily one. But yeah, Trent Reinsmith is the dude. He is that dude in MMA journalism with a podcast who is asking every single hard question every single day. And it's important to have somebody like him around. When Dana White talks about people that he is mad at because of stuff getting canceled, he doesn't mention Trent Reinsmith because he is that mad at Trent Reinsmith. Trent Reinsmith, I don't know this for sure, but based on what I have heard, he is definitely one of the people who reached out to prominent members of government in California as a fucking responsible journalist would. I know he's not the only one who did it. I believe, I would assume Josh Gross, I don't know for a fact that Josh Gross did. I assume he probably did. Because I know Jeff Sherwood was the one that broke the Tachi Palace story. But these are the people who fucking actually make a difference in the sport. They are the reason why there wasn't a super dangerous illegal event held in California that could have endangered a lot of fighters and, more importantly, just a lot of the public as well. I mean, if you're not doing testing like they weren't in Brazil, and then you're going to go to Tachi Palace and infect all of Northern California, a lot of which those people in that area work in fucking factories and like public service jobs or like at prisons and stuff like that. Like, it's a very, very dangerous thing you're doing. And so guys like Trent Reinsmith matter a lot. He also is asking all the hard questions about Conor McGregor and Ali Abdelaziz and all these things. And we need people like that in the sport because they make the sport better. It's very simple. Journalism makes communities and the place you live better. I know people hate to hear that in the year 2020 or 2021, but like, do any amount of research on the past and understand why there are severe laws about the freedom of press in this country.
So I'll say, speaking of that in general, and Trent Reinsmith does a fantastic job. I would call him some sort of filter for MMA media, and that he helps filter out the bad. But since there already is a lot of irresponsible MMA mediums in the MMA scene, he's more or less a counterbalance.
Yeah.
As much as I hate to call it that, because it shouldn't have to be where it's like you have all this shitty MMA stuff right here, and he's the one actually good, legit one right here, and it's but not putting all that weight on him.
Well, and also
he's definitely
like
one of the few that really is actually doing the. You can be subjective to call it the right thing. It's more or less the correct way, the correct method.
Right. And I would say Kareem Zidane is the other dude that stands out, along with the Show Money guys, who we'll get to in a minute. They are the. By the way, this basically became a Journalist of the Year discussion if we bring up Kareem. But Kareem doesn't have his own podcast. But this category, as far as I'm concerned, might as well be named the Kareem Zidane Most Informative MMA Podcast Award until he creates his own podcast. Because, god damn it, have I been rooting for that forever. And I think he's aware of that because I've tried to egg him onto it a couple times to make it happen. But, yeah, this is 100%... Those voices make the most difference in the sport, and they make actual change. And we'll get to that in a bit here as well. Fight Business Podcast is the podcast hosted by Patrick Auger over at The Body Lock. And I absolutely love it because he's also having these hard conversations, but he's doing it with a lot of the people I would like to hear discuss this stuff. Guys like John Nash, Josh Gross, all kinds of people. I can't off the top of my head. I don't have a list in front of me. But he's had a bunch of very influential and very important people on. They've done a lot of discussions on stuff like the One Championship financials, the all the antitrust suit stuff, the Abu Dhabi deal, all that kind of stuff. So it's very interesting. The ESPN pay-per-view deals. It's very interesting to hear him kind of discuss this stuff, especially when he has guests on to kind of go back and forth with. And I know you've listened to a bit of that as well, right?
Yeah, I think I listened to it about once.
It was probably the John Nash or the forget the other one that I just mentioned, but yeah.
But it was solid, well produced, informative. I think it was the John Nash one.
Probably.
Collab feature, whatever you want to call it. I feel like I'm talking music.
I think it was episode 5. It was that or Josh Gross. But yeah, it's very. I'm a big fan of that show. I don't know that it necessarily is going to hold up against Show Money and Show Money and Writing and Fighting. Come On Now. I think those are probably the 3 for me. Show Money is the reason why this category started. I mean, aside from the fact that Kareem Zidane doesn't have a podcast, because I'm just going to keep hammering that home. Everybody go convince Kareem Zidane to start a podcast, because that would be fucking fantastic. But Show Money is the reason why we created this category. They are doing the hardest journalism in the sport as far as when it comes to the financial side of it, and specifically the shit that makes the UFC the most mad. I feel like they are directly like,
so it's like PR fallout.
Well, yeah, it's very if
or
the
PR mismanagement.
I would say if the PR fallout mattered for the UFC has proven they don't give a fuck about PR, as we will get to in a bit. But Show Money with John Nash, Jason Cruz, and Paul Gift they have been consistently following the antitrust suit. They were in court following it alongside Josh Gross. They have been they've been very vocal about the whole process and kind of walking everyone through it. They're the only people. It's them and Josh Gross. And then like occasionally you get an interview or an article from a couple other people, but they're the only people covering this, and a big part of that is because, number one, it's costly, number two, it's time consuming, number three, it's outside of a lot of people's expertise, and number four, it doesn't really get clicks. As John Nash has said in a bunch of interviews, it doesn't really drive revenue or interest or anything. It's just actual journalism, and a lot of times that's how real journalism works. Is like it's not actually the shit that gets your fucking Conor McGregor clicks, but it's also the shit that fighters and fight camps look at to try and like change how they do business. And it's important to have them around. There has been literally the plaintiff or the UFC side and the fighter side in the antitrust case have both sourced the Show Money podcast and changed arguments based on discussions they've had in that show, which is crazy. And it really, I will be the first to say it is very much over my head in a lot of ways, because it is a very deep legal talk and financial talk that like I bear, like a lot of monopsony versus monopoly and payment model or fighter pay models, and
it's a lot of probably legal and technical jargon.
It's a ton of financial and legal stuff that is way over my head, but they do a very good job of breaking it down and making it at least somewhat accessible, so you can understand like some main key points and kind of things to look for and that kind of stuff. And so it's honestly, yeah, I think so. I'm just gonna go ahead and say right now, I think the 3 that are moving up have to be Come On Now, Fight Business Come On Now, Writing and Fighting, and Show Money. And here is where it gets really difficult for me, Chris. So you do know writing and fighting, you just don't remember it probably.
I remember a lot of things.
Nancy, well, you and I both. Shouts to the weed and the booze. Nancy Kidder, who actually has reached out to us and is very nice, is the professor at American University who hosts a panel show where she has a bunch of people on.
Oh, yeah. That was fucking awesome. I do remember that.
Yeah, and she's reached out. Really she's actually reached out to us in the past about maybe talking about MMA movies, which I don't want to denigrate her show with our fucking delinquent nonsense necessarily, but she is having some of the hardest and most interesting conversations in the sport right now, consistently, and it's so fucking impressive, man. I mean, Jesus Christ. The ones that stand out, she's had a ton of very, very tough discussions. Essentially, she is a professor at American University who is doing essentially an online classroom where she's having panel discussions with people across academics as well as sports, talking about everything about writing and fighting. So whether it be the things writers and fighters have in common, whether it be topics in the sport and how they're being handled, whether it be journalism, whether it be anything involved in any of it, really. And the ones, the four that stand out to me off the top of my head, or the handful, I don't even know that it's all four, but their discussion on race in MMA, their discussion on social media in MMA, their discussion on gender in MMA, and their discussion on geopolitics in MMA are four of the most insightful conversations I've ever heard in the MMA space. It is with a range of people from a whole bunch of diverse backgrounds, a ton of professors, a ton of fighters, a ton of... Please, Chris, go ahead.
I was saying, if I recall correctly, I think the one I listened to that had the big panel, I think there was like maybe 17 different individuals on there, like at a time.
It all depends on the topic and like kind of how it's all going, but yeah, I mean, there's absolutely a bunch of them. Like here, I can name off a couple of them off the top of my head, or not off the top of my head, but off the top of my notes. Let's see. In the race panel, she had Nancy, of course, who is a professor of literature at American University. Tanisha Singleton, who's the professor of media psychology at Fielding Graduate. Angie Hill, Janaka Lewis, I apologize, I'm probably butchering names, who is a professor of literature and director of women's and gender studies at University of North Carolina. Lewis Moore, who's professor of history at Grand Valley State University. Sean Black, who's a pro wrestler from LA. Julie Kedzie and Brian Siskind, who you guys would know from the Art Fight podcast. And then let's see. In the geopolitics episode, she had Kareem on, as well as Josh Rosenblatt and Kyle Green, who's a professor of psychology at Brockport State University in New York. And so it's that kind of thing where she's bringing together a bunch of minds in both academia and actual application of martial arts, and kind of bringing those voices together and having very hard, difficult discussions and uncomfortable discussions. The world needs more of it. America clearly needs more of it, and MMA absolutely needs more of it. So, in my mind, I going into this, I always thought Showmoney was going to win, but in my mind,
I'd say writing
and fighting takes the most informative MMA podcast award for us in 2020. Followed up by Come On Now with Trent Reinsmith and Show Money with John Nash, Paul Gift, and Jason Cruz. So congrats to Nancy Kidder, Tanisha Singleton, and Julie Kedzie and everybody over that's been a consistent part of writing and fighting. Man, honestly, that is some of my favorite content that I've seen recently. So I'm very happy to. I'm glad it exists in the sport. Makes me happy.
I do as well, because we need that.
Right.
Needs that, and just casuals need it too. Everyone needs it.
So now that we've gotten all mushy and had a good, fun
So this is for the most irresponsible.
Well, so originally, Chris, I was going to call this the least responsible MMA podcast of 2020.
See, and I'm
but
glad
that
you
takes
changed
away
that
takes away
that means they're still responsible if you call it least responsible. Which
well,
I mean,
and least responsible takes away their active shittiness, which they were actively involved in. It takes agency away from how shitty they were.
None of these nominees were responsible.
No, they were in fact the most irresponsible.
So,
I'm talking about B.
Yeah. You talking about nominees?
You talking about being not responsible, B?
There we go. Here are the nominees. The A-Side live chat. And, of course, we will get into why.
Yeah.
But if you're listening right now...
And also don't pay attention to the notes on some of them that are clearly giving away some part of it.
The A-Side live chat. Below the Belt. JRE and JRE MMA show. MMA Junkie Radio, the MMA Road Show, Punch Drunk Sports, Remember the Show, Schmo Zone, UFC Unfiltered, Weighing In, and You're Welcome.
Yeah, this is the list of hashtag problematic as fuck white dudes, isn't it?
So can you
okay, let's start with. Here's the first thing I'm going to start with.
Why there's some that have asterisks?
No, let's not even address that because those aren't definitely the ones that are moving on. Okay, first off, Punch Drunk Sports. Sam Tripoli has lost his goddamn mind on QAnon. He's out of his fucking mind. He literally is arguing with people in chat. You know what? I'm not even going to say anything.
So he wins. So now we got to talk about the runner-up.
No, the sad part, Chris, is he does not win. He's actually not. He's the first one I'm cutting out. Number one, because he barely shows up to his own show. Like he literally actively doesn't engage in Punch Drunk Sports because he's too busy in his conspiracy show that no one can listen to because it's banned on everything everywhere. He also, by the way, in case you're interested, still has a. Sam Tripoli still has a Patreon up where you can subscribe to his Patreon to watch Vimeo videos. Problem is, he's banned on Vimeo, so you can't actually watch anything. So you're subscribing for nothing. Also,
subscribe to him. Please unsubscribe and save yourself money and sanity.
Professional tip to anyone who is an MMA podcaster. Sam Tripoli, the guy who not only had the QAnon shaman on his podcast. Quick producer's note, I meant the praying medic, not the Q shaman, but I would argue point still stands. The Tinfoil Hat podcast. He also is actively arguing against people in chat, which can be seen on the TFATK Reddit page. They threw up a video of Sam Tripoli arguing with people in chat about how, bro, if you think I'm not aware of the Israel conspiracy, then you clearly haven't read my work, or you haven't listened to any of my work. That was a real thing. Also, here's the point for MMA podcasters. He is also still actively sponsored by Manscaped. So if you have a Manscaped sponsorship that you are actively engaged in, might want to send dudes a message being like, hey, bro, I don't know if I can still be a part of your shit if you're going to be doing very questionable Nazi-related advertising on podcasts that are literally associated with praying medic. Just something people might want to think about. Anyway. And that's the one that's by the way, no. In our list of most irresponsible, that's the first one we're cutting off. Mostly because Sam Tripoli barely shows up on that show and doesn't actually pay attention to Punch Drunk Sports. Johnny Woodward, also problematic character who believes in Q conspiracies and is the producer on Sam Tripoli's fucking vile fascist show, is also a problem. But Jason Tebow's hilarious, and while he yells horrible shit, I like Tebow, and I think he is actually kidding. So I'll go with that for now. Also, it's barely an MMA show is the real reason it's getting cut. I just wanted this opportunity to shit on everything Sam Tripoli is doing and shame him as everyone else should, as well as Manscaped. What the fuck, Manscaped? Like, the fuck. If anybody wants more information, I'll send you a clip. Ask me for it. Literally. Anyway, there are 5 of these.
So let's
wait. Hold on. So there are 1, 2, three of these that don't belong on here, but or two of these at least. No, three of these that need to get cut, but for obvious reasons.
Yeah.
A-Side Live Chat, the MMA Roadshow, and the Schmo Zone.
Yeah. These assholes all threw away their journalistic integrity.
So let me clarify this before you phrase it like that.
Yeah, I'll be careful.
I want to say that these reporters chose to allow their outlet to force them into a position where their voice is no longer credible.
Yeah, they chose access.
I want to specifically put the blame on their outlet because I feel like they were forced into
their boss.
They were forced into a position where they had no choice but to make a fucking bad decision, and they still made that bad decision.
Because there's certain and when I'm not considered a name, I just from what I've listened to from the said journalist, yeah. I know they, in my opinion, in good faith, they wouldn't decided this on their own. So it was clearly a decision from the higher ups.
There was definitely at least one of them.
I'm not necessarily giving them a pass for that because they still could have.
They still made that bad decision, and that's on them, and that's
on them.
It affects the way people will see their work going forward. I also think you can't just blanket put blame on them for being put in literally a lose your job or sign a piece of paper position. Like, it's so shitty, you know. Like, So I do want to give them that piece of credit. That being said, they will not be mentioned on the show, at least for the time being. I don't really have any interest in talking about them or listening to them, which sucks because I liked a lot of those shows. Not the Schmo Zone, but the other ones. Fuck the Schmo. Fuck the Schmo. He's a lazy fucking narwhal with no talent and with zero journalistic integrity. Fuck that guy. Everybody likes him because he's nice and because Helen Yee's his goddamn girlfriend. Everybody show some goddamn backbone and act like your fucking age. What are we doing? Fuck that guy. Just because he's nice. Fucking Anyway, okay, now we're moving on to a more lighthearted one. UFC Unfiltered and weighing in. I mean, Josh Thompson obviously has said some unconscionable shit recently. But, like, not really on that show that much, and John McCarthy is pretty good balancing beam for him, so I feel like it doesn't matter.
Since these are the remaining ones, so
UFC Unfiltered also, like, it doesn't belong. It wasn't great. They've said bad things and let Dana do bad things. So,
did the remainder of these shows say more Q shit, or do they say actually racist shit? Or fuck?
Well, so here's where we start getting fun,
because I imagine
Chris.
One of these is going to call BLM, like, terrorists or something fucking ridiculous.
Well, they didn't, but they definitely allowed people to do that on their airwaves a whole lot.
Oh, yeah, that actually checks out. God damn it.
Well, so here's where it starts getting a little bit tougher. So, I guess the next dividing factor is Ali Abdelaziz, right? Because if you're looking at who's left on this 5 between Below the Belt, JRE, MMA Junkie Radio, Remember the Show, and You're Welcome, 2 of those are Ali Abdelaziz problems. And that is because Ali Abdelaziz is still actively courting and friends with and making money with and off of a dude who has been sanctioned by the U.S. for crimes against humanity, essentially, for killing his own citizens for being gay. And so, both MMA Junkie Radio and Remember the Show have consistently allowed him to use their airwaves to talk and say not only horrific shit and lies, but Remember the Show specifically, we got blocked by Remember the Show for tweeting out and for commenting on their YouTube channel. Literally all we said was that we don't think people like Ali Abdelaziz who are giving a platform, or we don't think people like Ali Abdelaziz should be given a platform when he is actively supporting and doing business with people who are purging or who are essentially killing gay people in their own country.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, that was prior to the U.S. government agreeing with us and putting down sanctions. Since then, YouTube has also agreed with us and pulled all of Ramzan Kadyrov's YouTube channels. He's been pulled off of most social medias at this point. And it is an active problem, and it is shitty behavior by both Bilal Muhammad, but for actively allowing that kind of behavior. And I know it's tough for these fighters because honestly, who knows how much they even have control over their own social media?
Yeah.
Like, is it Ali that blocked us? Probably. Also, Ali conveniently doesn't block anybody on his actual account. He only blocks people on his fighters' accounts because he still wants the followers.
Yeah.
By the way, we've blocked Ali since then. And MMA Junkie Radio is like, they've just consistently given him a platform. They gave Colby a platform a whole fuckload of times. They gave Jorge Masvidal a platform when he's saying horrible shit. I mean, they've just notoriously done that throughout time.
Yeah, talk about killing your brand in 1 year. Jorge Masvidal. Goddamn.
God. Yeah.
Fucking moron.
Again, these people who are... that's why the first people I wanted to pull off this list was like all the media who made a bad decision this year, like in comparison to this other shit, not that irresponsible in comparison. They're not like being friends with fucking genocidal motherfuckers or like actively engaging in harmful behavior that's killed a lot of the country. And I guess that's a good segue into our next group of people, which is below the belt Joe Rogan and Chael Sonnen. Chael Sonnen's coming off of this list, but he still makes it to the runner-up category. Chael Sonnen, if you guys remember, was one of the people saying it's a lot like the flu, and Luke Thomas was like having to come out and be like, Chael Sonnen is out of his fucking mind. Chael Sonnen also, if you guys remember, was putting on events for Submission Underground in what was deemed a warehouse. It was actually a gym, I'm pretty sure, and that shit just went on, and essentially they were just dipping people in giant things they were literally just like spraying people down in fucking rubbing alcohol and sanitizer and shit all the time. Like, that was their solution. And that was literally, I think, the weekend before or after the UFC event that was supposed to go on that got canceled by the state. Right. So yeah, Chael Sonnen is super irresponsible, and one could argue responsible for the death of people in this country because of COVID-related diseases. That being said, not as bad as our two runners up, or our two main people. And I don't know who's worse, dude. I think they both win. I think they both win.
It's 100%.
It's a tie, right?
Joe Rogan is worse.
Yeah, you're right, because Brendan Schaub hasn't had Gavin Newsom on, or fucking
I'm not even worried about
any of these
Newsom.
super racist fucking idiots.
That's what I'm worried about. Like, having Alex Jones and then that one dude who's like a cop, I think. It's just like, what are you doing? Alex
Jones is so much more harmful than I realized after listening to...
No, that's why Joe Rogan wins. Get Alex Jones. Alex Jones is perpetuating actual conspiracies.
Yes. You're right.
He legitimately believes like most school shootings are false flag. It's really bad.
No, it's way worse than that. He's literally selling fucking... Well, first off, he sold lead... Was it lead pills that he sold? Or no, it wasn't lead. It was...
Was that his shit where he's like, it's extra male vitality?
Yeah, no, well, that's every one of them. By the way, guess who started selling pills just after Alex Jones started selling pills in 2013?
Rogan with his on it.
You're goddamn right he did. Yeah. And also, it was based off of who? Aubrey, who's from where? Austin.
Yeah, Aubrey who? Because
Aubrey the dude, Chris, I guess, was his name before he started going by Aubrey after he did fucking DMT in the... I don't know, I met Aubrey once.
Okay, because the only Aubrey I'm aware of is former baseball player, MLB player Aubrey Huff, who was an insanely out of his mind.
Not that guy.
You know, but that dude's an insane, like, QAnon conservative, I'm a racist piece of shit, and everyone in the not even just the baseball community... He's just like, you see him trending, and it's like because he said some dumb shit.
Oh, no, for sure.
Just like, by the way, Pro Baseball Hall of Fame balloting, certain voters who voted for Curt Schilling, amazing pitcher, great in the playoffs, right? Also a very out of his mind racist Trump supporter. So now some voters are like, can I take my vote back?
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, too late.
Man, so I didn't think this was going to break this way. I thought there was going to be 2 at the top. But congratulations, Joe Rogan. Not only does everyone hate you for your Spotify deal, which we predicted the second it was announced, but...
You talking about Spotify deal?
Yeah,
Never
but...
met him.
Hey, bro, we talking about how you beat B. Fucking, oh my god, Joe Rogan, congratulations. The most irresponsible MMA podcaster in 2020, which you can barely call him an MMA podcaster. I think we talked about his show. As a matter of fact, I can tell you how many times we talked about his show. Let's see, Joe Rogan MMA show, we talked about 5 times in the year 2020. 5 whole times, and a couple of those were skips. At least one of those was a skip. So, yeah. Also, the MMA podcast, or the MMA whatever of the year by the worst award show of all time. Chris, I love this next category. I'm just gonna let you read this category, the winner, or the runners-up and the winner all at once. I'm not even gonna show it on camera. I want you to read it.
Wait, say it again one more time.
Go ahead and read this next category as well as the winners, or as well as the runners-up and the winner for me.
Oh, okay.
Before I even show it on camera.
If I could even read this, I have to put this. Oh, here it is. The Dana White Award for sucking your own dick on camera.
I mean, I feel like, again, I want to award people who are so brave that they're willing to fellatiate themselves on video in front of the world for not only their own pleasure, but the world's pleasure. And so I really want to award the kind of bravery it takes to be that self-aware to openly suck your own dick on camera. This could be called the Marilyn Manson Award. But really, I feel like Dana White's really taken it to a new level of sucking your own dick on camera. So please, continue. Well, what are our runners-up and our winner?
The runners-up are Joe Rogan and Brendan Schaub.
Okay, I could see how that would be the case. Who do you think our winner should be?
The winner, I mean, the award is named after him, is Dana White himself, the bald-headed prick.
Congratulations.
That's fucking illegal.
To Dana White for winning the Dana White Award for sucking your own dick on camera. It's going to be tough to beat him next year. I have a feeling. But, you know.
We're the only sport that made it happen.
There's a lot of people coming for that crown. And, or at least for the head. You know what I'm saying? All right. Up next. Oh, God. I'm really proud of that one. I felt real good about it. It's so dumb. Let's see. All right. Up next, we have our most important episode award. I'm excited for this one, for real.
So the nominees are Severe MMA Judging Criteria Explained, Luke Thomas Live Chat Episode 27, The Fight Site MMA Podcast Bonus Episode 2, If the Shoes Fit, Joe Rogan Burned, Et tu, Reek, Fight Business Podcast Episode 6, Show Money Episode 35, as well as Episode 36 being a nominee. The Body Lock needs to address Colby Covington's blatant racism.
UFC needs to address.
UFC, thank you. Yeah, because
I edited that wrong.
Unleashed, Episode 38. The Fight Site Black MMA Fighters discuss issues of race in life, and I can't read
Sports?
That. That's okay. Writing and Fighting, Race, Representation, and Culture in Combat Sports. Writing and Fighting, YouTube, Geopolitics, and Combat Sports. Those are the nominees for most important episode.
Which of these have you listened to? Because I think you listened to a lot of them, but not all of them.
I've listened to If the Shoes Fit, the Joe Rogan Burned.
Yeah, that's a good one.
I have listened to Severe MMA Judging Criteria. I have listened to Body Lock, Colby Covington, and And I listened to the fight site. Black MMA fighter discussed issues of race in life and sports. So I think they had like Sydney Outlaw and excuse me, spoiler and a couple.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
No,
Okay,
yeah,
I have
you're
this.
absolutely right.
Yeah.
So
And I
here,
probably listened to Show Money too, but I just can't remember.
yeah, you definitely did, because those are the I know we talked about them in the past, because they're the big episodes about the antitrust decisions that were like right before it came down and right after it was hinted that it was going to drop. So, um, I broke this. So we had we had best episode last year, and this year, with the way 2020 has gone, and looking at our episode list, there was a very distinct line between entertaining episodes and important episodes or informative episodes. And so I felt like important was the way it needed to be phrased this year, and really the way this year has gone, I think, kind of determined what this category needed to be. And as a result, I don't. So here's my thing, Chris. I don't know. There's a very clear line of shows that need to be on this list. But some of this stuff is like fight stuff that's like, yeah, it's definitely important things that happen in MMA. And then another part of this list is important shit that happened in the world and in this country that also involved MMA. And I feel like those are way more important and way more valuable for the community as a whole. So I'm going to go ahead and do this right off the bat. These are all moving up. The body lock discussion about how the UFC needs to address Colby Covington's blatant racism. The Unleashed episode with Ant Walker, Jay Petrie. Oh my god! Why did I not write everybody's names down? Let me see if I did. I know Matthew Wells was on that. Where's my notes? Sorry, having to dig through stuff. Yeah, Matt Wells. And there was somebody else on there that I apologize, and I didn't write it down, so I apologize. But it was a discussion essentially a lot about the George Floyd Memoriam by the UFC, and the fact that they put up that title card while essentially Dana White was still just spewing Donald Trump shit the entire time and allowing Colby Covington to run his mouth and all that shit. And how jarring it is to see Dana White like consistently backing Trump politics, and then also the UFC just like, I almost did the Dan Tom jerk-off GIF reaction, but I'm not going to do that. But, like, it just feels like such lazy, placating corporate bullshit. And so I think that's an important discussion to be had. Just like the body lock, the UFC just needs to address Colby Covington's blatant racism. That was, again, Matt Wells and Ant Walker, who Ant Walker, of course, is also on Unleashed. I realized I didn't say Ant's name. He's one of the main hosts on there, or I could argue the main host on there. Ant, the discussion Ant and Matt had is important as fuck. I mean, I'm going to say that about all this stuff, but it's hard conversations to have. All of these they're hard conversations to have in America or in MMA or just in general in life. They're uncomfortable. No one feels good about them, but they're important. And that's how we grow as a fucking culture, is by learning from each other. And by not talking about this shit, we're doing all of us a disservice. Chris, why don't you speak to the fight site Black MMA Fighters discuss issues of race in life and sports that Ed Gallo hosted as kind of I believe he saw the USA Wrestling panel and was inspired to do a similar kind of thing with
I know.
Sydney Outlaw, and then I got the other names if you set it up.
Yeah. So yeah, I remember I listened to this months ago. The fight site, like I said, it was hosted by Ed Gallo.
Yeah, that's right. It was Shayna Dobson, Sydney Outlaw, and Bradley Desir.
That's who it was, Bradley Desir. Okay. Yeah, it was very informative. It was very interesting. It was very just personable, really, just the stories that were shared from the three fighters. A lot of it was just the environments, the backgrounds they grew up, the culture they grew up in. Unfair treatment based, stemming from systemic racism that exists in the United States. That's unfortunately entwined in the infrastructure and fabric of the United States as a whole. I don't know if they necessarily just called it outright like white supremacy. I mean, systemic racism is just kind of just coincides, is correlated with white supremacy in general.
They didn't. I think Ed would probably lean more towards that than they did. Which again, Ed is of similar mind as a lot of as me and you and a lot of other people. Where it's like, I think a lot of people give too much credence, especially nowadays, to hidden racism and like all those motherfuckers. Like even as Robert Evans who I'll talk about in a bit later, always says, as a lurker on fucking super sketchy white supremacist boards, motherfuckers hide their what they refer to as their power level. And white supremacists always couch their language depending on their audience, because they're always looking to get the broadest audience engaged as they can. Yep. Because it helps their cause. So they will intentionally couch how they phrase certain things, or will or won't bring up certain things, depending on whether it helps their cause and helps grow their audience. That's why it's important to hear discussions like this shit and just have people say what the fuck it is. Like, I don't know, you and I have been around enough white dudes, like, sometimes shit gets weird, and you're that dude who has to be like, alright, well, fuck that guy forever. And I feel like a lot of times people, since they don't outwardly hear the one clear racist word, they don't call it racist. And I feel like that time is probably over. And it's also just interesting hearing one of the most important things about these discussions is just like all the stuff that you don't even think about. Like me as a white dude who grew up in a middle class family in San Diego, like, I don't think about a lot of the interactions that a lot of people have to deal with on a daily basis, especially in fighting, where I'm not in gyms. I don't know fucking like MMA gym culture that much, because I generally don't get along with a lot of motherfuckers who are part of MMA gym culture. So it's very interesting and insightful to hear these discussions actually happening. And not just happening behind closed doors or like in small groups, but happening in public and where anyone can hear it. And so I think it's important to kind of get that, not only that information out there, but also just to make people aware these conversations are happening and should happen. It makes us all better. It's how we all learn.
And it's important too, and I know I'd probably piss off the unfortunate majority of just the MMA fan base. And generally speaking, I believe, I can't remember what podcast it was I listened to, but they said if you were to guess a percentile or percentage of...
I just listened to this exact same thing.
Yeah, all MMA fans that
I'm pretty sure
are very conservative. Let's call it conservative. And that doesn't necessarily correlate to racism, but if I want to go further, okay. So what percentage of the MMA fans are conservative? And that's just conservative values. There's plenty of conservatives that aren't racist. I know that. I'm not ignorant to that. So I think they said 70%.
70 or 80, I think it was. I believe that was the fight site discussion is where that came from.
And not saying that this is an exclusive to conservatism, nor it could be to liberal views, right? Which percentage do you think of just MMA fans in general are racist or have like
40?
40, yeah.
I'd say 30 to 40.
I'd say 30.
Based on my interactions on message boards that I fucking even enjoyed, like the positive message boards I was on, still like 30.
I'd say a third, 33, but like to be fair, it's probably 40.
Yeah, and that's that's the clear shit. That's the obvious shit too. That's not like the subtle shit.
It's crazy too because I don't want to compare to other sports.
It's not better. It is depending on the sport.
The real answer to that is right? Soccer or football, whatever you want to call it.
Well,
just because it's international and you get all of Europe just
like
being racist.
Spain alone.
Yeah, Spain and Italy.
Yeah,
and Portugal are like
worst,
the three.
Dude.
are the three perpetrators.
So bad.
Mostly
They're
Spain.
Yeah, mostly Spain.
Yeah, they're shit. Homophobic as fuck, racist as fuck, like
Terrible.
throwing banana
That's the
peels on the
worst shit.
pitch kind of racism. Like, what the fuck?
Yeah. Although, to be fair, it's not like we're against. We're like, we don't have it either. Like fucking.
Oh no!
What was it?
The first,
Duke.
First
What was
city.
it? Was it Duke? My dad's alma mater, who threw pizza boxes on the court after the dude got accused of some. Anyway, that's a bad story. I don't even want to bring that up. Keep going.
My first answer to racism in American baseball is Boston in general.
Oh wow!
Both
Yeah, just the
hockey
city of
and
Boston.
Fantasy
Yeah.
baseball. Yeah,
Check
it's
that.
not good.
Yeah.
Holy
Anyway,
shit.
I guess we should keep moving on to some of these episodes. So writing and fighting, the two writing and fighting episodes that stood out to me, although the social media one and the gender one could also be in this list, but I didn't want to make it huge. And the two that stood out the most to me this year, specifically about the giant issues that were clearly affecting specifically this country and MMA the hardest in my life anyway, or that I experienced, was the race representation and culture in combat sports and the YouTube geopolitics and combat sports discussions. The race panel, I think I listed the people on both, but like hearing people like Angela Hill talk about the way MMA, not only media, but like promotion and fans and everybody treats her, and like how integrated her race is into how she gets treated is fucking frightening. I guess I don't like, again, we're big Angela Hill fans and we come from here, and I don't know, like I can't at all relate to a lot of these fucking people who talk like this, but it just blows my mind that so much of the discussion around her is around her race rather than like the way more interesting shit about Angela Hill. Like, Angela Hill's fucking fascinating. How about just her being an artist? Yeah, or her personality, or being hilarious, or like her dope ass beer taste, or her fucking sweet T-shirt design. I don't know. I'm not just gonna suck Angela Hill's dick on this. I don't want to win the award next year for the Dana White Award. But I'm just saying, like, hearing her have discussions, and like Tanisha Singleton, who is the professor with a PhD on Nancy's, who like generally is like the co-host, for lack of a better word, on a lot of Nancy Kidder's discussions and panels that she has. Tanisha is like one of the brightest and funniest people I've heard on podcasts in a while. I'm a huge Tanisha fan, and hearing her have discussions about like, she says, I said, that's probably not great. That's how I talk, but it sounds bad in translation. But Tanisha said in 22 years at school, getting her PhD, she had 3 black teachers the entire time, if you don't count her kindergarten teacher. That's an insane stat. Like,
that's fucking embarrassing.
I grew up in San Diego, but I can name the one black teacher I had my entire life. I had one.
Yeah, unfortunately, I had none.
Yeah, I think that's a real discussion to be had in California at least, but I would argue because she was in Riverside also, which, well, not for that part, but I mean, she grew up in Riverside, but yeah, it's an interesting discussion, and it's exactly the kind of thing that, like, man, I didn't think about that until she talked about it, and I was like, fuck, I can like name the number of black teachers I've ever met on one hand. Like, Jesus Christ. So yeah, it's those kinds of really interesting discussions, or like the writing and fighting episode with Kareem, talking about all of the crazy shit he's experienced, from sports washing to, Kareem Zidane, by the way, we've talked about this. You know why Kareem Zidane's Journalist of the Year? Because Kareem Zidane has been told that he shouldn't go to award shows because people can find him that want to find him.
Yeah.
That means you're Journalist of the Year in MMA.
Yep.
That means you're the best. It doesn't get any clearer than that because nobody else has that problem. Fucking Access Ariel doesn't have that problem.
Yeah.
So, and then like he talks about everything from QAnon. This is in November, by the way. He talks about how scared he is of. He says, here, let me post some actual quotes because they're very important, especially in retrospect. He says, democracy is very fickle, and it's a very thin line between it and authoritarianism. Like, and he talks about how he's seen democracies fall and how they had democracy for a year after a revolution, and then it just went away. And like, he's also the person out here reporting on all the QAnon shit, on all the right wing watch articles he's been putting out. Kareem Zidane is the most important voice in our community. It's not close. It's not close. He is not only that, he's one of the better journalists in the fucking country. How about that? And he's not even, I don't think he lives in this country. I don't know where he lives. I
believe he's from Egypt.
He's from I know he lived in Cairo a lot, and then he went to University of Toronto, as they talked about in the episode. But his location is undisclosed, obviously, because he's doing real journalism. So all these reasons are why we've talked about all these episodes, and so I put these together, and I was having a real hard time picking, like, how do you pick a most important episode out of these, right? Because they're all so important. And then I realized the winner this year for most important episode is difficult discussions in MMA. That's the winner. The most important episode this year are difficult discussions in MMA and the world around us. And that's why all 5 of these are our most important episodes for this year, because they're all equally important. And it would be unfair and unrealistic for me to choose which one is more important in my eyes. Because my eyes don't fucking matter.
They're all must listens.
So, the most important episodes in MMA podcasting in 2020 are difficult discussions in the sport and the world around us. And so, the Body Locks discussion on the UFC needs to address Colby Covington's blatant racism. Unleashed, episode 38. The Fight Site discussion on Black MMA fighters discuss issues of race in life and sports. Writing and Fighting, race, representation, and culture in combat sports. And Writing and Fighting, YouTube, geopolitics, and combat sports are the most important discussions to be had, and we need to have more of them as a culture, as a society, as a country, and just as people. So, big congrats to those groups. Those are hard things to do, especially 100%. In public, especially with criticism allowed, and I appreciate the fuck out of you making it happen. So on that note, we're going to take a quick break, and Chris and I are going to be right back to get into some way dumber stuff. That's a lot more fun. But less important, probably funnier, though.